Siloed marketing. This is a scenario that I see pretty often with clients. They're doing blog posts, social media, ads, then they have a graphic designer and a web designer, and they're all operating in their individual silos. There's nothing that ties them all together. So in today's show, we're going to be talking about why that's a huge mistake that's costing you money.
Welcome to the Higher Purpose Marketing Strategy Podcast. If you're frustrated by marketing and want to stand out from your competition, this is the show for you. Every week, we're discussing how to build a plan that attracts your best customers and aligns with your values. I'm your host, Ashley Conway, follower of Jesus, CEO of Be Weird Marketing, marketing coach, and copywriter. I promise to defeat the ick, yuck, and struggle bus feelings you may have about marketing with a few good stories and proven advice. So let's have fun and get to work.
So let's start out with a story. Y'all know I love those. Let's say I'm going to create a band. I love a lot of different types of music, including country. So let's just say I'm going to create a band. I'm going to put 4 people in it. Ben Rector, if you don't know him, you must know him. Morgan Wallen, Dan and Shay, and Michael Bublé. That's a good variety, right? So they're coming to audition for the band. They all get there at the same time. They pick up their instruments, their tracks, their whatever it is. They all start playing and singing different songs. And it sounds like a hot mess. So what I'm there to do as the person who's leading this is to say, we need to get on the same page, sing the same song, the same arrangement, and you all need different parts. You can't sing at the same time, right? So marketing is very similar. You may be doing a lot of marketing things, but they all need to be in sync. They need to work in harmony so that the result will sound better than, like nails on a chalkboard. You know what I'm saying? So that's what we're going to talk about today. That is an example of what I call being siloed. You just have your piece of the pie and you're not worried about the other pieces of the pie. The other people are working. So you could also call that a la carte marketing. You can call it piecemeal marketing. But there are 5 very important reasons why, if you're doing this, you want to stop and make changes. The first is your audience. Could you be wasting resources on marketing that your audience will not see? Because if you don't have this overarching plan that does like a deep dive into your audience, what specific kind of person is this? Where do they spend their time online? Or if you have a brick and mortar, where do they just spend their time out in the world? Where do they shop? What do they do? What do they listen to? How are they spending their days? You may be wasting a lot of, manpower, a lot of money, putting out content or trying to get their attention in places they're not even looking. Or maybe they're there, but that's not the type of content that they go to that place for, so they ignore it. I mean, this would be an example, like if you're putting ads on Facebook or something like that, but those people don't go there very frequently, your target audience, or they go and they just want to check on a group, or they're just wanting to check on, connect with a longtime friend or a family member. They're in and out, they're buzzing right by, and they're not going to see your ads, so they're not going to be effective. So that is number one, very significant. Is this going to be a waste, or is your audience going to be where you're marketing and they're primed and ready to hear from you? Number 2 is your messaging. If there's no overarching person thinking about your messaging, is it going to line up with your top priorities? Of any of the podcasts that I have produced so far, number 1 is the one that is the must listen, because we are going through your customer's journey, your marketing roadmap, and how, just like a quick review of the steps, the awareness is the first house, and your customer has to become aware that you exist, right? Then you move them from awareness to consideration, and that's where kind of the relationship building begins, the part where they get to know, like, and trust you, and then they're getting closer to being ready to make a purchase from you. Even if it's just something small at the beginning, then that's their purchase experience. Then you move to retention, which is everything post-sale. And then to loyalty, which is, people who are your raving fans. They'll be your lifelong customers. They'll tell other people about you. So of those different houses, you need to choose, where do you need the most help right now? Where do the most of your marketing resources need to be allocated? Is it people finding out about you? Is it people building a relationship with you? With most of my clients, it's one of those two, at least at first. So if that's the case, let's say you just need more people to know who you are, that you exist, then a lot of your messaging, a lot of your creative, your content all needs to line up with those messages. You need to attract attention. You need a hook. You need something to stop the scroll. You need to be sure that you're standing out from your competitors. All that has to line up. But if you have writers and you have a social media person and you have a designer and they're not all on the same page about what the goal is and what that end thing actually should look like, it's not going to be effective, right? And the other part of that is, every business, as a part of your brand, you should have key messages. Just the way that you talk about your business and what you do and who you serve, that sounds exactly the same. This is that philosophy that it takes so many impressions. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but many, many impressions. Someone to hear about you and what you do before they're ready to buy. We need that message to be the same. They need to associate, this is what we do, this is who for, this is the result that you'll get with your business and your brand. That can only happen if you have this overarching plan and a viewpoint that ties all of your marketing together. So that's number 2, messaging. Number 3, let's talk about brand voice. So if you have all of these people in their silos, it's going to be really hard for everything that they're creating to still sound like you. Believe it or not, your company has its own brand voice. I have some clients that are very creatives. They're very conversational in the way they talk about what they do. They're upbeat. They're kind of whimsical almost, things that, you would say sparkle and the type of words that they use. And it really does match their personality. Then I have clients who are very corporate. They don't want the personality. They want it to sound very businesslike, very buttoned up, the same messages over and over. So those are different voices. And when a person reads that, either one of those voices, they're going to imagine a different type of company. So your company has its own brand voice. And we need it to sound like you, no matter what the medium is. If it's ads, if it's social, if it's your website, it all needs to sound like you. This also helps distinguish you from your competition. If everything you put out looks like you visually in terms of the graphics, your colors, your fonts, the images you used often, and it sounds like you in your voice, then that is going to become your brand identity. And when people see something, they may not even have to read it. They can see a look just of like what I was talking about, colors and fonts and images, and know that's that company. Because we do it too. You can tell a lot of times what's from Nike before you see the check mark. There are some brands that have just owned the way they visually present themselves and with their messaging, and that becomes their identity. And you want to be that as well, so that you'll stand out from your competitors who are maybe a little more all over the board. So that was brand voice. Number 4 is efficiency. You can imagine if everyone that you work with, whether there's someone on your team or it's a contractor, whatever it is, if they're starting everything from scratch, it's going to be inefficient. So let me give you an example. You have a copywriter that's doing blog posts for you, and every time they do a blog post, they start with a blank screen. Maybe you come up with an idea together, like for a topic, or maybe they do it and they write something from absolute scratch. Then here in a different corner of the world is your social media marketing contractor, and they are creating posts, and they're just creating everything from scratch. Like here's a blank canvas. Like a blank canvas in Canva, let's say. We're going to start out, we're just going to make up something to put out there, and so on and so forth with anyone doing your ads or anyone writing your emails. They're just starting off with something blank. That is so inefficient compared to, let's take the blog post, since that's your longest form of content in that example. The copywriter writes the blog post. Then the social media person turns that into posts. The email person turns that into a couple of paragraphs for your next email newsletter or whatever it is. They're operating off of the same content, really. They're just repurposing it for what they need it for. That's much more efficient. Now, granted, the person who writes the blog post needs to know all the strategic information to create something that is going to draw people in, that has the right call to action. They need to do more than just write blindly, because everyone else is going to kind of go off of what they create. And that kind of leads into number 5, strategic decision making. If everyone is operating on their own, how do you know that in their piece of the pie, they're moving people to the next step? Like, it's the right call to action. They're directing them to the best next right thing. How do you know what to test? You should always be testing different things to see what works. So who's there to watch over the testing and say, let's try it this often, or let's change up the copy here, or, to supervise the test? Who's going to say, do we need to make changes based on the results we're seeing? Do we need to create something new that we need to add? What about the things that could fall through the cracks, like getting testimonials? That's a lot of times something we don't think about until we just happen to need them for something. What about gathering the data and analyzing it? All these people in the silos are not going to be doing that. And you would probably say, well, that's our CEO. The problem with that is, you know the drill. If CEOs are incredibly busy, have a lot of competing priorities on their plate, and as good as you are at what you do, marketing may be a weakness for you, that you don't even feel equipped to look at these different pieces of the pie and to make these strategic decisions and to know what the data means and to know what to test. You may feel overwhelmed by that. And that's why, it's a huge weakness if you just have people operating in silos and you don't have anyone that understands all those different pieces and can tell you everything will be much more effective. You'll get more leads, better leads, that lead to sales if you do this from a more holistic, strategic approach. So those are the 5 reasons to stop siloed marketing in your business. I'll review them one more time. Number 1 is your audience. Know where they are and make sure that you're marketing directly to them in the best way. Number 2 is to ensure that you have consistent messaging. Number 3 is that you have the same brand voice across all your channels. Number 4 is efficiency. A la carte marketing is very inefficient because everyone is starting everything from scratch. And number 5 is strategic decision making. If people are working in piecemeals, there's no one to make those strategic decisions or just to review everything from a strategic point of view. So here's your homework, because I know online is so noisy. Your life at home is so busy. There's so much on your plate. So let's just keep it simple, really, for every one of these episodes. Just pick one thing. Pause this, pick one thing that you want to follow up on or do some research on or consider, and schedule 30 minutes on your calendar so that you'll be sure to do it. That's the thing. We hear so much great information, but a lot of it we just kind of forget about. And I don't want that to be you. So just put down a few minutes on your calendar right now, pause me, and go do that. Okay, so time for one of my favorite segments. It's office hours. Terry asked, how can I improve my website so more visitors turn into paying customers? It's a great question, right? One a lot of you have probably thought of. But let's drill in a little bit for some clarity on this, because how can I improve my website is a little broad. So if the question is, how do I improve my homepage when I just get people to my site and turn them into paying customers, that's a really big ask. Because a lot of times people are coming to homepages, let's say, just to check you out. More information. Are you credible? Do you look professional? So what we're wanting to do with that page is just direct them to somewhere where they can get to know us better. To a podcast, to a blog, to your social media, to sign up for your lead magnet. We just want them to engage with us a little bit so we have the opportunity to serve them and to prove ourselves as experts. But if the question is, how can I improve my landing pages or sales pages so more visitors turn into paying customers, that's different, because then they already have an interest in buying or in signing up, whatever it is. So first, you need to hook them. You've got to attract their attention in some interesting way to make them want to continue reading. Then you're showing that you understand them. You understand what their problems are. You're not just trying to sell them something. You are trying to solve a problem that they have. So first you have to show them that you understand what the problem is. Then you're going to spend some time answering their questions and objections. So you're going to have to know, and this is part of deep diving into your audience as well. What questions are they thinking when they're looking for your product or service? And what are their objections? I mean, that's a prime real estate for an FAQ to directly address their objection. If it's on price, you can have a question that's on price and talk about the value that is a part of your price point. And then lastly, you want to solve their problems. You've gotten their attention. You've showed them that you understand them and their problem. You've answered any questions that they might be thinking. And then you're going to show, this is what I offer, and this is how it solves your problem. This is the result, the transformation you experience, the benefit, that type of thing toward the bottom. I hope that answered your question, Terry. And so I know that these are very large questions. I don't expect that you're going to listen to this podcast and immediately be able to flip a switch and change everything about the way you currently operate so that it is more cohesive and it's more strategic. No, this is about making small steps but toward a bigger result down the road. So the first step I really recommend is to have an audit to look at, where are you now? That is something that I offer, an audit of taking a look at your website, your social media, emails, ads, just a brief look to see, are these consistent? Do they have the same look? Do they have the same voice, the same key messages? Are they talking to the exact same audience? All of those things I do for an audit, and it's very cost effective, $150. And I'll do this audit for you, create a video, and then create a Google Doc that will kind of give you the recommendations in written form. You can get that at bit.ly/audit-my-marketing. I trust this episode has been helpful to you. I am here to serve you in any way that I can. If there's a question that you would like to submit for me to feature here on the podcast or just to answer on social, feel free to go to the higherpurposemarketingstrategy.com website or go to Instagram at BeWeirdMarketing and send me your question there. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.
Thanks for listening to today's show. For all things podcast, including transcripts, extra resources, and a place to submit questions for the show, visit higherpurposemarketingstrategy.com. I'd also love for you to do me 2 quick favors. 1, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and 2, share this episode with your colleagues. And that's a wrap. Meet you back here next week.